That's interesting. Okay, recording. Okay, so we're ready to go. So good morning. How are you this morning, Robert?
I'm doing well, Charles.
Good. All right,
Doing well.
I'm gonna do a brief disclaimer, and then we'll jump in. And so, remember, I'm the Charles Bryson, Director of Civil Rights Enforcement Agency for the City of St. Louis, and all opinions and thoughts related to this conversation are my own and not reflective of any other entity. So I always have to say that so we can get that out the way. So let's talk about Robert first, and then we'll jump into some other issues. Tell our listeners and viewers a little bit about Robert Powell. Who is he?
It's interesting that you say that. My last art piece as a sculptor, I titled, "Who Do They Say That I Am?" And I'm not sure, whether I am completely finished with who I am. But as far as it goes with regards to the life that I'm living now, I am the founder and executive director of Portfolio Gallery and Educational Center, a 32-year-old not-for-profit 501c3 arts organization. I've been doing that, as I said, for 32 years. Along the way, we've had the opportunity to be of service to a number of organizations throughout St. Louis and the region. St. Louis Public Schools, the City of St. Louis, Visual and Performing Arts High School, Ferguson School District, University City School District. Our mission has been to educate, enrich lives, and foster a greater awareness of art created by the African American visual artists. I have often asked people to name 5 nationally known African American visual artists, living or dead, hoping to compare and get them to think about the artists that they have in their heads that they've been taught about, who are outside of their community, but they know very little about those from their own community. So that has been our mission and our journey that we've been on. And we have accomplished our mission and journey by exhibits of artwork, classroom instruction, workshops, seminars, trying to let people know that the African American visual artist in particular has been around as long as any artist that they may have in their head that they recognize. We were creating art long before it was probably called art. It was a way of life. It was history. It was an expression.
Well, storytellers.
So storytellers, yes. And that's what I've tried to continue through Portfolio, and who I have been is that person that tried to create a vehicle that artists could get in and ride and tell their stories. And for that, certainly we've had some recognition, winning the Missouri Arts Award, which is the highest award you can receive in the state. Excellence in Art from the Arts and Education Council, a number of awards that people have bestowed on us, helped us to achieve and move forward. So as I said, we find ourselves in 2021 in our 32nd year, and we're proud of where we are and where we hope to go in the future.
Has your art been a journey for you? That's the way it sounds, is that as each new piece comes, it reveals a little bit about yourself and where you are along the journey we call life.
Yes, certainly. It's all about that. One of my favorite pieces that I often call my cornerstone is called Roads of Life. And Roads of Life was created out of the idea of positive motivation through art. I often listen to people and the words that they use, and often people complain about a lot of different things. But for relatives and friends passing away, life has been very good to me. You know, I think I've had more good times than bad times in this journey of life. And so I try through my art to tell those kind of stories, positive things, lest we forget from whence we came is another piece, you know, mother and child, uh, family, those kinds of stories that I hope to tell, as opposed to all the negative things that are around us, but not necessarily a part of us. So sure, my art has been a journey. It's been an opportunity to tell stories that I hope I have time to put in writing to talk about it a little more.
How did you get involved in sculpting, which is a very specific art versus anything else?
Well, I became an artist and started calling myself an artist in 1973 when I was in the military. And certainly I was stationed in Alameda, California during the Vietnam era. And I started that philosophy of positive motivation through art when I was teaching in the Oakland public school system, industrial arts. I taught wood shop, and I moved our students away, in a sense, from the traditional bookends and shelves, and we started doing more carving of the bowls and various images. And it's something that I've been doing since 1973. Trying to tell stories through my art. Uh, it seemed like that was the vehicle that allowed me to express myself. So I've kept doing it and have enjoyed the journey that I've been on.
Do you primarily work in wood, or do you venture into some of the other types of material, I guess would be the question.
Right. Yes, I primarily work in wood, and I think the reason is that it's so abundant. When I arrived in St. Louis in 1979, what is it? I'm trying to think of the park up in University City. I discovered this park that Heman Park, yes, and they would cut down trees and store them there, unload them there, and it was easy to go there and pick up wood. I also went down to the riverfront and found driftwood. So wood has always been this common, familiar medium for me. I have done carvings in stone. When the botanical gardens had a Chipunga exhibit, I took a class out there and worked in stone. I really enjoy stone. I just don't get around to it as much as I would like to. But yes, I have sculpted in other mediums.
You mentioned Portfolio Gallery, which actually had you had a building right on Grand. Was it put there intentionally?
Well, intentionally, I'm not sure, but certainly I like to call it divine guidance. It was located in Grand Center next door to Powell Symphony Hall. And so I wonder how often people secure a business next to another business that has its name on it. So it was an opportunity
I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, Powell Hall, we were next door to them for 26 years. Grand Center certainly was our jumping off spot. We ended up selling that building 5 years ago to kind of point a different direction because of employment issues. We've never raised enough money for us to hire this complete staff, and I could never identify those artists or people who were entrepreneurial, who could pay themselves and still keep the organization afloat. So we tweaked our organization a little bit. We now utilize other gallery spaces here in St. Louis and throughout the region. We've shown artwork in Hannibal, Missouri last year, Black Girl Magic. We did the exhibit at Maryville University 2 years ago. We're scheduled to be in Quincy, Illinois at the Art Center there in May of this year, May 21st. So we've still do the same things that we have done, but without a brick and mortar location.
And I asked that question for two reasons.
So
one is, if you may or may not remember, my youngest daughter and I went there several times and viewed the artwork. But it gets to the issue of African Americans supporting other African Americans, especially in the arts. And your gallery was beautiful. My youngest daughter loved to be there and walk through. But I remember having a conversation with you about there's a difference between people walking through and people buying. And so I asked a question because what I don't get a sense of in our community, whether we're talking the city, we're talking region, is African Americans really supporting the arts in general, but especially something like what you did in your gallery. Did you see that? Did you feel that?
Not really, Charles. Overall, as I've reflected, we've had great support from the African American community. No matter if that was Wayman Smith, who was at Anheuser-Busch, he was a part of our community. Those who have pointed a direction for portfolio, Congressman Clay, we've had great support from the African American community in general. Certainly we could use more, as other organizations could. It's certainly a mindset. Those organizations outside of our community have a great head start on us. We're used to giving to those organizations, supporting them. We are still the pioneers. I spoke with Ron Himes the other day. Ron is 44 years old. And if you equate that to being a child, I have a child that's 44 years old that still from time to time needs support. So we're the pioneers. And the Black Rep is the oldest Black cultural institution in St. Louis, but it's still a baby in a lot of ways. It's not been around 100 years. We recently did an art show at the St. Louis Artists Guild. They've been around 126 years. Now think about that. You know, our journey is new, and economically, we don't always have the financial means to support in the way that we would like to. But those who have helped us along the way certainly have been, for the most part, from the African American community.
When you talk about support, I know there are institutions that provide some economic resource or financial resource. One being the Regional Arts Commission. Any thought about what, excuse me, what role they play? Are they primarily a different type of art? Do they rather than what you do in terms of sculpture, they may look at the performing arts versus you? Where do you see their role being?
No. Well, they are a funding agency, and I believe that they're loosely connected to the city of St. Louis. They have a tax base that comes from hotel revenue.
City and county.
And so,
The St. Louis City and St. Louis County is their
St. Louis City and County, yeah. So they're funded through a tax base. And certainly they give matching grants out to visual arts, performing, all the arts, musical. They do what they do with regards to supporting various arts and cultural institutions. However, I do think that COVID has weakened them very much because of people not, going to the hotels as much. That's all down. So they have an uphill battle now. They do have a new director, Vanessa Cooksey, who I think will do a good job. But again, it's going to be an uphill battle finding the money to fund the various groups and finding people who review the grant requests who are familiar with organizations. Sometimes I think both the Missouri Arts Council and Regional Arts Commission give out grants, but they've never been to some of the organizations who are submitting. They've never attended any of their exhibits or musicals or theater performances. And it makes it difficult when you don't know about a particular institution.
I want to get back to funding in a minute, but I want to have a conversation about artists, especially Black artists in St. Louis. And do you see Black artists get their start in St. Louis and then they leave? And if they leave, is it because we're too small of a region for them? Is it because they don't feel like they get the support? What some of the folks that you know and you've talked to, what might be, if you see them leaving, what might be some of the reasons, and how to keep them?
Well, I think it's probably broader than you have presented, Charles. For some times the talk has been that young Black people leave St. Louis in general. They graduate from college and they leave. So it's not just the arts. And as I think about the arts, I don't have a name that just jumps out at me that they left St. Louis. Maybe one name, John Roselle, who was here, but he left academically and went to the Art Institute in Chicago, and then he's done some other things. But it might be a bigger reason why people leave St. Louis. I've often thought about the motto that St. Louis has: "Go west, young man." They're telling you to leave, aren't they? That's been the mantra of St. Louis: go west. And you wonder why, as opposed to stay home. And there was a great commercial that the Regional Chamber of Commerce put on. You know, they had the map of the United States, and they said it was a spot on St. Louis, and it said they built a country around us. That meant something, you know, that we're in the center of the country and accessible, those kind of things. And I think maybe a marketing strategy would be different than what we are presenting. Those in position to make a difference, maybe they should look at how do we, you know, retain people in St. Louis. The city of St. Louis population has dropped, you know, so it's not just the arts. I think it's a bigger picture. You know, what is the city doing to make it a better place for the artists, for the young graduates who have dreams and thoughts, you know, certainly Cartex coming along, you know, and where it's still the broader community there. There are African Americans involved in that development. But I think it's just, you know, a bigger picture of whether young Black artists leave or stay in St. Louis. Yeah, I think it has something to do with, you know, the teachings of the society, the teachings of St. Louis, what people perceive it. Again, being an outsider, one of the things I often heard was, you know how St. Louis is. And I was saying, well, why do you keep saying that? Why not change it? If you know how it is, you know, try to change it and make it what you want it to be. So that's kind of my thought on leaving. If you can get away from the negativity of presentations that people give you, St. Louis wouldn't be a bad place. You know, if you keep your head when those around you are blaming everything on you and talking negatively about you, you know, you can grow, you know.
There's a question that has been on Facebook for a while, and I just thought about asking you. Did you have any Black art, using that big term, instructors or teachers when you were growing up? Because there's that question about when did you get your first Black art teacher? And many people have answered, I've never had one. You know, at one time, and when I was growing up, art was a requirement that in high school, I had to take an art class. And so people have been asking that question. So I want to get your feel about that. Did you have a Black art instructor in school or anywhere along the way that you remember and guided you a little bit, or taught you a little bit, I should say?
Yes. I think my first teacher was my brother, Lonnie Powell, who is a established artist. He was always drawing, painting, creating images. And then when I went to Lincoln University, and I'm sure even before that, because I was in a segregated school as a youngster, and art was just part of the curriculum. So we had a Black teacher who taught us. And then, as I said, going home, my brother was always drawing and painting. I think, as I said, I have not had so much formal training as opposed to being a self-taught artist. Mm-hmm. Just starting to do something, and you sell a piece of art, you win a competition, and I think people in general, you repeat your successes. So it was something that I got a satisfaction out of, and I just have kept doing it since 1973, calling myself an artist, looking at art, going to art shows, creating, promoting art. So that's how I've got started, and observation has been my teacher, and for the most part, that's observing the Black artists who I was mostly around. I have not been around the broader community artists for the most part until, an adult, and probably the last 20 years, most of the people that I have interacted with have been, within my community.
So they were your teachers, they were your guidance, they helped instruct you as you moved forward?
Right. And various conversations, and, there is a conversation along those lines of, is there Black art? And I think Black art is any art that is done by a Black person. You start there first. Mm-hmm. Now, there are those from outside of our community who do images of Blacks, but I'm not sure that that's Black art. Even though we don't call Picasso's white art, Italian art, it's what it is, it's from that community, that thought. So I am one who, I'm proud to be a Black artist. I'm not just trying to be this artist without a background, without a connection to anything. I've always thought that art, from my perspective, from the Black artists, we are the stone that the builder rejected. You look over there and you say, you mean you're from that community? Yes. That community that you say no good comes out of, no direction. Yeah, I'm one of them. And I don't think that I need to be any more than that. I am a product of my community, a connection to my family history, my friends, those that have helped mold me. So that's kind of where I am on that,
I understand. Would you consider yourself a leader in the Black artist community?
Well, I've often thought that leaders should have followers. So you can't lead if you don't have any followers. Therefore, I guess that there are some that would say I'm a leader, but I don't define myself like that. I'm still wanting to be this team player. I do the things that I do, and hopefully they motivate people. They inspire people to do similar things or move in a similar direction. Leader, I'm not sure. You know, in corporate America, they talk about leadership, but they have a job. They're being paid. They better do what the boss says, or they're going to be out of there. I don't know if, you know, necessarily they're leaders. They do what the top management say do, and it rolls downhill. Whether or not they would follow them in something outside of a job, I'm not sure. You know, so leadership is a strange thing to me. You know, you got to have some followers and people who believe in you and believe in your idea. So I've been a leader in some cases, but willing to be a player on the team also.
I want to spend the next few minutes talking about something you and I have exchanged conversation about a number of times. I want to, I guess I want to go to a little bit different place. And I'll make a statement and we can go from there. And that is, there's not enough venues with enough funding for Black art. And I take the long view of Black art being any art, as you kind of said, created by Blacks. So I would say that there's not enough venues that are established and well funded for Black art in our region.
I would agree with that. And I think one of the ways that would help us as a community is to become a member of the Metropolitan Zoo Museum District, which currently funds, you know, 5 institutions within St. Louis: the Art Museum, the Zoo, the Science Center, the Botanical Gardens, and the History Museum. Those 5 institutions are funded through a tax base, and they split $85 million annually, with the St. Louis Art Museum and the Zoo getting the lion's share of that distribution. I think they're getting somewhere 20 to 25 million annually. And that's in addition to the money that they can raise from friends and supporters of their institutions. So if there was an opportunity to be a part of that entity, that would save and help grow organizations. We might lose our identity, meaning there might not be another portfolio or a Black rep or those kinds of things, because those institutions promote their particular venue. You know, the Art Museum collects art from all over the world and has various exhibits. They also collect Black art, and we get a chance to go to the Art Museum and see the King Tut exhibit or the Kehinde Wiley exhibit. So they bring in Black art for us to go see and be a part of. I would prefer it if we, the African American community, could bring in those particular exhibits and promote the history of Blacks in America and throughout the, the world.
Let's go back, because I will tell you, a whole lot of people have no idea what the Zoo Museum District is. So if you could take us through some of that. It was created years ago, and I believe it's a property tax, but you'll correct me, I'm sure, that is assessed, and it goes for, by law, it goes for those, as you say, 5 institutions. Am I close there?
Oh yeah, that's right. It's based on property tax, and the assessments, if you own property, commercial property, real estate, then you pay a tax. If you're a homeowner in the city and the county, you pay a tax, and that tax money goes to support those 5 institutions. And as you may know, the zoo just expanded out into North County. They have some portion of their facility out in North County now. And that's what is needed, to be able to have a tax base that would allow the institutions to grow.
Because they have, every year, they have a certain level of funding versus having to run outside and go get money every year. They have as you say, they have a base of funding to which they can start out every year from.
That's correct. And that's one of the things that helps them. Speaking of the zoo again, and I forget the name of the hospital that was there right outside of Highway 40 there. There was a hospital that they tore down. But the Friend, no, I don't think it was Deaconess, but the idea being that the Friends of the Zoo bought the hospital and then gave the property to the zoo. Mm-hmm. The people that bought Portfolio building and gave it to the symphony. We just don't have that kind of base that allows us to grow. And those who might have expendable cash are giving it to lots of different places, so it becomes hard to start over every year, constantly in a fundraising mood. Part of the monies that the institutions from the Zoo Museum have, as you said, they have a base. They can hire staff to go out and they can give fundraisers. When the Art Museum did their expansion, they had a number of people who gave $10 million each. We just don't have that. And that's outside of the money that comes from the tax base. So
wasn't there an effort years ago to include Blacks in the Zoo Museum District?
Yes, back in 2013, I believe, there was legislation passed to establish an African-American museum district to become a part. The problem is getting on the ballot. It costs money to get on the ballot. If you get on the ballot and don't pass, you lose your money. we just don't have a champion. You know, I've talked about it for years about becoming a member. I don't have the know-how in my mind and efforts to, again, lead. I can tell you that it's a need, but how do I get Civic Progress to say, you know, that is right. It would be great if the African American community had an institution that promoted the great cultural things that are happening, you know, throughout their community, and, you know, bring in various disciplines of the arts. So yes, the legislation, but it's been sitting dormant because we don't have a champion who has and knows how to maneuver it to the ballot.
Is that
As much as we can talk about it.
Is that state legislation or city of St. Louis or the region? Where does it
state,
ballot at?
that came out of Jefferson City, state, yeah. Senator Maida Coleman introduced that legislation, got it on the books, but it has yet to be put on the ballot in the city and the county with a simple majority that would be based on a tax increase of, I believe, 4 cents on $100 of assessed value of the property. So if this institution were to be established, I believe they would have 11 million or so dollars annually to operate. Maybe it's up to maybe 12 now, I don't know. But no Black institution in St. Louis has $11 million every year. So that's how powerful that would be if we could secure tax-based support for membership into the Zoo Museum District.
I'm not sure how many, especially the current legislators, know that this issue exists in such a way to where they might be able to affect change. It's disappointing that the entire, the way you're phrasing it, I'm kind of asking you a question, the entire state would have to vote on things that occur in the city and county. Is that correct? Would that be?
No.
It's just city voters and county voters.
City and county voters. Simple majority is all that would be needed. It has nothing to do with the total state, but the bill allows for certain entities to seek membership into the Zoo Museum District, and the African American Subdistrict is part of that. I believe the Transportation Museum, the Symphony, the Symphony tried a few years ago, maybe 8-10 years ago, but they didn't have the support to, you know, after they did their investigative reporting with regards to whether or not they had a chance. I think they withdrew their application.
They did, yes.
So it's an uphill battle trying to find the support for it all.
So I'll ask you a question. You don't have to answer it. Who might lead that sort of conversation, that sort of discussion? And you can name any name you want, but just don't name me.
Yeah. Well, certainly, maybe the new mayor, who will be coming in could lead such an effort to establish the African American Subdistrict. Maybe the leader of one of the largest Black-owned corporations in America could lead such a venture. It's going to take, back to that leadership, someone who has followers or who can get the ear of people to galvanize around an idea, because that's what it is. It's an idea, it's an attempt to look at the status of the African American community and a way that might allow it to grow and to be a shining beacon throughout the nation. It certainly would be ahead of a lot of established Black institutions, around the country. I'm not sure what Black institution gets $11 or $12 million annually anywhere. I don't know who that is, or where it is,
True.
So it's finding that leadership, that person or persons who think that would be great if we had an African American subdistrict, part of the tax base, but people always, run away from raising taxes, they run away from postage, it costs 55 cents for a letter. Yeah, that's something that simple, a letter that goes all the way to Hawaii, and then they say that person doesn't live here, and they'll send it right back to you at some point. You get it right back, and all that for 55 cents or whatever, a dollar. So it's, how do we identify that person or persons? That's what would help, Charles. Someone who has the ear of the people. As I said, we got a mayor election. If the mayor were to champion that, push for that, maybe that's the person who could get it done. Talking with legislators, yeah.
Yeah, I think the word that comes to mind when you talk about this is gravitas. Somebody who really has the ability to just bring people together off the basis of their personality, their work, those sorts of things. And I think there are those people around. We just maybe need to shake the tree and get people moving on that. So I think it's possible. Where'd he go? I think it's possible. I think it's just a matter of pushing it forward again. This and under the guise of racial equity. If everybody's talking about racial equity, this is it. This is racial equity 101. Making sure that there is a place in our community for African American art and artists.
Yeah, and the culture and history of a people. See, I sometimes think people forget who we are. I'm 75 now. I'm, closer to the enslaved people than Charles Bryson is. You just got here in essence, but I'm 75. Selma, Alabama was 50 plus years ago. That's how long we've been in the game. See, we think that sometimes it seems to me like people think we've been around for 100 years. We haven't even been voting for 100 years,
right.
So we're still very young in the whole game of all of this. And yet, look what strides we have made. What we could do if we believed in ourselves more, fought more, identified, the needs throughout our community. This COVID has shown us that there's a lot of disparities within our community, throughout the nation. So, I heard a thing the other day that Elliot Davis was posing a question, why are there so much shooting in St. Louis? Well, the question might be better, why are there so many shootings in America? It's not just St. Louis. This happens throughout. And we as Blacks in St. Louis are just like the Blacks in New York or Chicago or wherever it is. We're still trying to figure it out and grow. It's a mindset that we still have to get back to, when I was growing up, you heard you had to work twice as hard to get just to, first base. When others are standing on third base and they trot home. Yeah, because they have a foundation, and we need that kind of system, community that, and I guess it's going to take time, but I'd like to see us skip a few grades and get it done soon, because we've been waiting and striving, for this many years, Voting Rights Act, integration of schools, all of those are in our lifetime.
Yeah.
We just getting started. So we gotta realize who we are and where we stand in the big picture. And the broader community has to realize that too. We just getting started. And to have had a Black president, something that I had never thought I would see, so it takes that, some abolitionists who want to help and make it better. We're not complete yet. I often put it like, you go to the doctor, and as long as you take this medicine, you feel better. But don't get it mixed up with you are well. I want to be well. I don't want to be better. I don't want normal. Normal wasn't that great for the African-American community.
Right.
I want well. How do we get well? That's my drive, So, yes, there's a need to, galvanize people who have the similar mindset, who want to do something that has never been done before. And that's what I think it would take to become a member of the Zoo Museum District, to establish that entity. It's never been done before. And so who wants to be a part of history and create this entity,
Well, I will, I'll leave it there because I don't know any better place to leave it. We'll go ahead and put this on Facebook and YouTube and every other place by this evening. And hopefully this will spark a conversation, because it's well, as you say, it's well past time for this to happen. And so Robert, I appreciate you being with me today. I'll let you go and do your other work for the day, but I thank you, Gracious, for your appearance today, and wish you and your family well and health as we move forward in 2021. So Robert, thank you, greatly appreciate it.
You also, Charles, thanks for the opportunity.
All right, you take care.
Okay.